Hello and welcome to PGurus channel. I'm your host Sree Iyer. Today is episode number 29 of Daily Update with Sridhar Chityala. Sridhar ji, namaskaram and welcome to PGurus channel.
Namaskaram and good morning to all, and very early good morning to you, Sri Ayarji, and good afternoon and good evening to rest of the people.
So, sir, we'll jump straight across to Hong Kong, where the last vestiges of democracy are being dismantled by the Xi Jinping regime. What are your initial thoughts, sir?
I think my initial thoughts are this was anticipated, this was expected. They have been progressively moving towards the approach of what they call containment and submission. So no territory under China would be a renegade and would need to follow the policies that is established from the center. So they have chosen the most appropriate moment when there is questions around the transition and there's contention. So therefore, this is in the U.S. elections, right? There was anticipated this gap would be leveraged for some kind of activities which China would attempt. So we have seen the first part of it. The four legislative council members were suspended for their democratic activities in the council. So this age-old institution, which was the last bastion of democracy, witnessed all of the opposition members en masse resigning against this concept of, you have to be a patriot, right? You have to be a patriot in the council. We saw immediate reaction from Mike Pompeo, which is to say, we haven't seen the last of what we would do in Hong Kong, and there's more to come, and United States doesn't accept. Whether the current incumbent, Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris, follow the same, or would they have a little more softer approach in dealing with Hong Kong and China remains to be seen. But it's very, very difficult to see Chinese at any given point of time reneging what they have done. So this makes it all the more important what is going to happen to Indo-Pacific and South China Sea discussions, when Mr. Biden and Ms. Harris takes charge, and what's going to be the scenario.
Yes, indeed. And we now are going to start looking at some of the happenings in the United States. Biden has formed his transition team, and there's a whole bunch of activity going on there. Sir, your initial thoughts on his team? He has created a new position also for supply chain management. So perhaps you can walk us through all the things that Biden has been doing. By the way, we're going to talk about markets right after this, and there is an important announcement there also. So please go ahead and let's talk about U.S. politics to starters.
Right. So Biden was very clear, and his mandate, which is no small mandate, 74 million people voted for Biden, while 71 for Trump. So it's a huge mandate that he has in his hands. And he had indicated that economy and pandemic are his first two priorities, notwithstanding what his kind of beliefs are on the economy, which seems to be chugging along reasonably well. The pandemic is a kind of a big issue. So first thing that he did is formed a pandemic task force for the overall integration and supply chain kind of management, and he has given Dr. Vivek Murthy, the previous medical general, to be in charge of the project. That's the first. The second he has done is also going to establish nationwide task force, very similar to the Roosevelt model. So the story is that will ensure that mass testing would occur right across the country. This is one of the issues that they were discussing in the Stimulus 2 program, that the testing should be nationwide and for all. So that was the second point. Then in terms of the executive actions that he had contemplated, and which was his policy plank, I think one of the first things that he's going to do is to look at this whole situation of unemployed people, whether you extend the insurance to all the unemployed kind of people, and the non-documented type of way. He doesn't use the word non-documented. Expansion of the Medicare to the broad universe in the United States, some of whom have been left. So I think that's one of the first items. The second is also looking at removing this or mandating the unionization policy, which is to say that every member has a right to form the union within workforce, or what you call right to work, right? So that's the second thing that he's contemplating. The third thing that he's kind of contemplating is lifting the travel bans that were imposed in some of the specific Islamic nations. He wants to say, no, I'm lifting the travel bans. So that's the third thing that he may execute using the executive power. The fourth that he is planning to do is restore confidence, what he calls restore confidence in global institutions. So, which is namely, give the due importance and start paying the dues to WHO, United Nations, and such organizations, which used to say, we're back in business. This model is different to the kind of the old model. So, let's kind of reestablish and reconnect. Then he wants to reach out to the global leaders, what he calls allies who were left out, and tell them, I'm back and we're going to be working with all of you. There's no kind of preconditions for allies to be part of the what you call the relationship framework with the United States. One other, whether he would do it in executive or whether he would go through the normal conventional legal processes, rejoining the Paris Accord. Given that the Paris Accord was established during his vice presidency in the Obama, Biden years, I think he may do that as an immediate kind of a visible step of goodwill and rejoin the Paris Accord. So you can see that he is very clearly thought out and orchestrated kind of an approach in terms of what he proposes to do via executive actions on day one. And just on that point, on the Affordable Care Act, while this is going on, the Republicans had filed third time, the governors of few states had filed with the Supreme Court the kind of termination of the Affordable Care Act. Last night, Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Roberts seemed to be inching towards, more definitive, inching towards a model where they will leave most of the Obamacare or Affordable Care Act intact, only eliminating the individual mandate portion, right? Only eliminating the individual mandate. The individual mandate itself in 2017 was made null and void to some extent by making the individual mandate zero. That means every person has to have a medical insurance, and that medical insurance can be zero. So that effectively the clause is so the Supreme Court may set aside. So that could also be that's a kind of a win as he steps in, which is to say the Obamacare Act is here. How do we kind of, only individual mandate is removed, so how do we extend the reach?
And next, we want to talk about a little bit on what is happening in the world. Arnab Goswami, a popular TV anchor of Republic TV, seems to have gotten his bail from the Supreme Court. A little bit of what you think happened, sir, at the Supreme Court today. He had been put through the ringer in terms of, being thrown in a jail and on a case that is apparently being closed. So what do you make of what happened today, sir?
Yeah, so just can I take 1 minute of the time to wrap up the executive actions with the broad policies?
Please
you may
go ahead.
see that
Please
he
go
has
ahead.
indicated that. Thank you, sir. So you may see a broad set of policy changes that will be fundamental deviation from the Trump policies around immigration, labor laws, trade, security, foreign relations, energy. So there's a whole range of programs that they have laid out, which effectively will replace many of the policies, including taxes and environment. Many of those policies he has laid out, besides the executive actions through the House and Senate process, that will effectively nullify whatever the prior regime had kind of done, including the 4.7 or 4.3, whichever the number that comes out to trillion new taxes. So we'll cover that separately, but I just wanted to wrap up. The executive actions is immediate, but the broad policy changes will happen during the course of his regime. Okay, so I just want that, so that way the two pieces are delineated and there is a holistic context. Now moving to your question around, I think, Arnab, it's a very interesting question to ask someone who is very distant. But let me kind of give my 2 sentences. I think it looks like the anomalies and the ambiguities which was not brought out was picked up by the Supreme Court. And what they have stated is that the role of the Supreme Court is to make sure that the constitutional validity is preserved and maintained, and one cannot use the whims of power of the state and the police to act and misinterpret the Constitution in terms of putting a person behind bars, right? That seems to be the case in this, right? There's nothing proven as yet, nor there is a correlation between money and suicide that has occurred. So therefore, it's time that the law is rightly interpreted. And I'm not. This is Justice Chandrachud. I'm not just going to walk out, leaving that pot, because this court has responsibility for the preservation of the constitutional validity. So he seems to have won the day to that extent. The law has prevailed. Once again, in India, the Supreme Court has acted, notwithstanding lots of noise that you heard, Modi didn't do this, Modi didn't do that, and, whether there's a system, etc. I think Arnab is represented by a team of lawyers led by Harish Salve, who is very respected and reputed, legal luminary in India. So I think that there seems to have been some normalcy. I think it continually raises these questions around the independence of journalism versus the political state and legal influence in the processes. It seems to be very muddy, and it also seems to be driven by, to some extent, political connotations.
Yes, and one hopes that Arnab will continue his brand of journalism, and we'll be watching and we'll be commenting on the developments as they come along. So now let's take a look at the United States stock markets. The markets appear to be rotating in and out of stock. Like, for example, yesterday some tech stocks were down, but today we are seeing that the tech stocks are up. What do you make of this market gyrations now? Is it because the money has no other place to go but the stock market that we are seeing the stock market keep going higher?
Well, I think that you probably have hit the nail on the head, which is the market gyrations are a manifestation of both sentiments as well as liquidity, right? So sentiments it was driven by sentiments in the first 3 days. It went up close to 850 points to date in the Dow Jones Index, which is driven by the discovery of the pandemic vaccine. And that, when I say discovery, it has 90% of tests revealed positive disposition around 45,000 patients, which was the Pfizer. Now we also got Eli Lilly getting the approval for the plasma transplant type vaccine model. So you're beginning to see that there is positive synergy. So that you saw in what they call as the non-tech as well as what you call lockdown stocks. So some of these, Zoom and these kinds of stocks, tech stocks, went down and went back into the core, which is financials and consumer discretionary, and tech stocks took a backseat. It went into financials. It went into it also went into materials. It went into bit into manufacturing. So which means people will be going and physically kind of doing work. And so that's the rotation which you talk. But today, again, suddenly you see back the tech stocks are up, ranging from 0.3% to 1%, depending on where the stocks are, depending on where the relative multiple is for those stocks. So Amazon was the smallest mover, and Microsoft and Alphabet, etc., saw a little higher moves in terms of the tech. Right now, pre-market. This is pre-market, and these things change, every few minutes. So even 10 minutes old information is a 10 minutes old information, right? So you saw that what we'll continue to see until such time there's clarity in policy, and also the Senate elections, the results, outcome from the Senate elections. I've heard rumors, or I've heard unofficial, that North Carolina has been won by Republicans, but it has not been confirmed. Officially, Alaska, they are leading by a long margin, but not confirmed, only 55%. Assuming if those two goes to Republicans, that's 50 seats. Effectively, that means they either one seat, or if they win both in Georgia, they have a majority, which implies, as most of the analysts say, the markets love divided government. When you have a divided government, there will be checks and balances in terms of any extraneous outcomes that come from the market. So, in terms of immediate term, that would be. In terms of yesterday, today, for rest of the week, you may see these gyrations come up and down. And to your point, which you very adequately pointed out, is equities means only US market, right? Especially with bond yields where they are, the only place where you grow, where you go to drive growth and generate some income is equity stocks.
Now it's a good time to buy stocks, or is it already too late?
I think that you have to selectively buy stocks. Some of them may be very highly overpriced, right? If you're in for a long term, if you're in for a longer term, my definition is anything about 3 to 5 years. 3 to 5 years, I believe, tech stocks are very good. The healthcare biotech stocks are very good because remember, imagine what the next 3-4 years kind of hold. I believe that there is going to be a transition to the retail model. So you're going to see the consumer discretionary and consumer staples, moving up. You are also going to see financials kind of going up. But eventually, the interest rates need to kind of rise. So you will see financials to be a good play. I say material sciences also is good because they form the foundation for the fab industry, which is semiconductor stocks, right? So why semiconductor stock? More consumption of electronic digital content means there's more digital infrastructure that is required. That means the next generational chips. Mind you, Mac is just announcing the next Mac N1 with its own chip, right? So therefore, you're going to see the semiconductor industry kind of grow as well. So these are some of the sectors. I'm a more a macro kind of a guy. I'm not a day trader. So I am in public markets, but more as a macro portfolio investor rather than a day trader.
Thank you very much, Sridhar ji. That brings us to a close on today's program, and we'll be back as always tomorrow morning, bright and early at 8 a.m. Eastern Time, 5 a.m. Pacific, at 6:30 p.m. Indian Standard Time. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to PGurus channel.
Namaskar and thank you so much. Have a wonderful day.